All right, so today we're diving into San Francisco, April 1906,
Oh, yeah?
the day after a massive earthquake.
Right.
I mean, the city is in flames.
Yeah.
There's chaos everywhere, and people are making,
Crazy.
yeah, just crazy life or death choices.
Absolutely.
So we're going to unpack firsthand accounts, official reports, and even
Wow.
a few surprising personal stories to understand how this disaster unfolded and what we can learn from it.
I think it's fascinating because we're not just looking at the earthquake itself,
Right.
but the human response.
Yes.
How individuals and systems react under immense pressure.
Exactly. Like, imagine getting a telegram that just says, go document the earthquake.
Wow.
That's what happened to author Jack London.
I had no idea.
He rushes to San Francisco and finds a scene straight out of a disaster movie with buildings crumbling, refugees everywhere, and fires spreading like wildfire.
It's hard to even imagine the
Yeah.
scale of it.
I know. And
But-
his account, along with others, provides a chilling snapshot of those first chaotic hours.
London actually describes a man offering $1,000 for horses.
Wow.
A small fortune back then just to haul his belongings away, only to see them go up in flames moments later.
Oh, my God.
He also recounts a heartbreaking story of a mercy killing.
Oh, no.
A man trapped beneath the rubble who couldn't be freed before the fire reached him.
That's just horrifying. It really emphasizes how the fires fueled by the earthquake's damage became almost as destructive as the earthquake itself.
Yeah, and the earthquake had ruptured water mains throughout the city,
Oh, sir.
leaving firefighters with dry hydrants.
Wow.
So they turned to desperate measures, including dynamite, to try and create fire breaks.
Wait, dynamite. I can see how that might backfire literally.
You're absolutely right. Our sources indicate that many soldiers and firefighters weren't properly trained in using explosives for this purpose.
Oh,
In some instances, it seems they actually ended up starting more fires.
wow. So you've got a city already on fire, people panicking, and then potentially more fires ignited by the very people trying to put them out. It seems like a recipe for absolute chaos.
Precisely. And in the midst of this chaos, leadership, or the lack thereof, becomes a critical factor. Enter General Funston,
Okay.
a figure who takes decisive, even aggressive action. He deploys troops,
Yeah.
orders. Dynamite essentially tries to take control of the situation.
But from what I'm reading, Funston's actions weren't exactly met with open arms.
Right.
There seems to have been a real power struggle going on, like that Navy lieutenant who refused Funston's order to sail off and get more dynamite. He basically said, we're needed here to save the waterfront.
That was Lieutenant Frederick Freeman.
Okay.
And he was instrumental in trying to protect San Francisco's vital infrastructure, the piers and docks. He saw the immediate need for water and manpower to fight the flames, and Funston's focus on dynamite and troops seemed to clash with those priorities.
So it wasn't just a natural disaster they were dealing with,
Well-
but a political one as well. And what about the everyday people caught in the middle of all
Yeah.
this? Those just trying to escape the inferno?
Their situation was incredibly difficult. Escape routes were limited, ferries were overwhelmed, and conflicting information added to the confusion. Imagine being a family trying to flee, carrying your belongings, encountering roadblocks seemingly at random.
Oh my gosh.
It must have been terrifying.
Our sources actually highlight one family's struggle.
Okay.
A Chinese family trying to reach the ferry facing not only the danger of the fires, but also potential discrimination and roadblocks based on their ethnicity.
That story brings to light a crucial insight. Even during a natural disaster, existing social inequalities can be magnified,
Yeah.
creating additional layers of suffering for marginalized communities.
Then you have Mayor Schmitz trying to establish some semblance of control. He forms the Committee of 50,
Okay.
which sounds impressive on paper.
But in reality, they were hampered by inefficiencies and a lack of real authority. Imagine this.
Okay.
The city's burning around them and they're constantly on the move, struggling to find a safe place to meet.
So not exactly the picture of a well-oiled machine. And to make matters worse, Schmitz issues a shoot-to-kill order for looters.
It's a drastic measure that raises serious questions about the balance between maintaining order and respecting human rights in a time of crisis.
Right.
The order contributed to escalating violence and vigilantism, with armed citizens taking the law into their own hands. It wasn't always clear who was a genuine threat and who was simply desperate to salvage what little they could.
Okay, let's pause here for a moment. We've got a city in flames, a power struggle between the mayor and the general desperate refugees, and now armed citizens roaming the streets.
Yeah.
This is a powder keg waiting to explode.
Absolutely.
It really paints a picture of just how volatile the situation in San Francisco was. We've talked about the fires, the lack of leadership, and the desperation of the residents, but what about Funston's plan to dynamite Van Ness Avenue?
Right.
Was that just a desperate gamble?
Yeah.
Or was there some strategic thinking behind it?
It's a complex question. Van Ness Avenue at that time was known for its elegant homes, a symbol of the city's prosperity. Imagine the scene: soldiers setting up artillery, preparing to demolish these grand buildings in the hope of halting the fire's advance. It must have been a sight to behold.
And for the residents on Van Ness watching their homes about to be blown to pieces,
Right.
what a gut-wrenching experience that must have been. But was it effective?
Well,
Did it actually work?
the accounts we have offer conflicting perspectives.
Okay.
Some argue that creating that fire break along Van Ness was instrumental in containing the blaze. Others suggest that the fire was already losing momentum as it reached the less densely populated areas, and that Funston's actions were more for show than anything else.
So perhaps it was less about actual firefighting and more about asserting control,
Yeah.
projecting a sense of decisive leadership in the midst of chaos.
That's certainly a possibility. Remember, Funston was a controversial figure, often criticized for his heavy-handed approach. But in a crisis of this magnitude, there's a natural desire for someone to take charge, even if their actions are questionable.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What makes a good leader in times of crisis? Is it decisive action, even if it means making tough calls that might not be popular?
Right.
Or is it something else entirely?
That's a question for the ages. But let's shift our focus for a moment. While this drama was unfolding on Van Ness, what was happening to those who were fleeing the city?
We talked about the challenges they faced.
Yeah.
Limited escape routes, overwhelmed ferries, and even discrimination. Was there any sense of order, or was it every man for himself?
The sources paint a picture of utter chaos and confusion. Ferries were packed beyond capacity, and even when people managed to reach the waterfront, there was no guarantee of getting on board.
Oh, gosh.
Imagine finally making it to what you think is safety, only to be met with more chaos and uncertainty.
It must have felt like a nightmare with no end in sight.
Absolutely.
And for those who couldn't or wouldn't leave their homes,
Right.
they faced a different kind of terror.
Imagine being huddled with your family, watching the flames approach, knowing that you've lost everything and that your life is in imminent danger.
Right.
The psychological impact of that experience must have been profound.
And amidst all this, you have reports of looting and vigilantism. How did the authorities respond to this breakdown in law and order?
Well, remember Mayor Schmitz's shoot-to-kill order?
Yeah.
That only added fuel to the fire, so to speak. It created an environment where anyone could be deemed a looter, leading to instances of violence and injustice.
It's chilling to think about how quickly a society can unravel in the face of disaster. But amidst all the darkness, were there any glimmers of hope, any stories of compassion and resilience?
Absolutely. Even as the city burned, stories of selflessness and community support began to emerge. People opened their homes to strangers, shared what little food and water they had, and worked tirelessly to help those in need.
That's what's so remarkable about the human spirit. Even in the darkest of times, we find ways to help each other to find strength in shared adversity. It's a reminder that even when everything seems lost, hope endures.
Indeed. And that spirit of resilience played a crucial role in the aftermath of the earthquake as well. The fires eventually burned themselves out, leaving San Francisco in ruins, but the work of rebuilding had just begun.
That's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore how San Francisco rose from the ashes, the challenges they faced, and the long-term impact of this devastating event. So the fires are finally out, but San Francisco is in ruins. Over 28,000 buildings destroyed, more than 225,000 people homeless. I can't even imagine the scale of the devastation. Where do you even begin to rebuild after something like that?
Well, the immediate focus was on the essentials,
Right.
food, water, shelter, medical care.
Yeah.
Tent cities popped up all over the city, and aid poured in from across the country.
Yeah.
It was a truly remarkable display of compassion and generosity.
I'm struck by the stories of everyday people opening their homes to complete strangers, sharing what little they had left.
Yeah.
It speaks volumes about the human spirit's resilience.
Yeah.
That instinct to come together when times get bad.
And that spirit of resilience was essential. San Franciscans didn't just mourn their losses.
Right.
They rolled up their sleeves and started putting their city back together, literally brick by brick.
But it couldn't have been easy rebuilding infrastructure.
Oh, no.
Dealing with the economic fallout and reimagining the city's future, those are monumental tasks.
Absolutely. The 1906 earthquake wasn't just a physical disaster.
Yeah.
It was a social and economic earthquake as well. Businesses were destroyed, livelihoods vanished, and there were serious doubts about the city's ability to recover financially. It was a moment of reckoning, forcing San Francisco to confront its vulnerabilities and chart a new course.
I'm curious, what role did the city's leadership play in this process? Did they rise to the occasion, or did the cracks in the system become even more apparent?
It's interesting, isn't it, the disaster really exposed those fault lines. We saw how the power struggle between Funston and Schmitz, the confusion over authority and the lack of preparedness hampered the initial response.
Yeah.
And in the aftermath, those same challenges persisted.
So it wasn't just about rebuilding structures,
No.
but also about rebuilding trust in the system and the very idea of leadership.
Precisely. There were heated debates about building codes, land use, and the role of government in the reconstruction effort. Some saw this as a chance for a fresh start, a chance to create a more modern and equitable city. Others just wanted to return to normalcy, to rebuild what had been lost. It was a clash of visions, a struggle to define what San Francisco would become.
And what about Funston? He was such a prominent figure during the crisis. Did he continue to wield influence in the rebuilding process?
He did. Funston remained in charge of the military presence, overseeing relief efforts and maintaining order. He even involved himself in some of the reconstruction planning. He was a polarizing figure, as we've seen.
Right.
But there's no denying his impact on the city's recovery.
And what about Mayor Schmitz? After that controversial shoot-to-kill order, did he manage to hold on to his position?
Schmitz faced a lot of criticism for that order and for his overall handling of the crisis. Many people questioned his leadership and his ability to guide the city through such a tumultuous period. It seems the earthquake, in a way, sealed his political fate.
So the 1906 earthquake wasn't just a test of San Francisco's physical infrastructure,
Right.
but also a test of its social and political structures, and in many ways it seems the city was found wanting.
That's a fair assessment. The 1906 earthquake served as a wake-up call, not just for San Francisco, but for cities across the country. It highlighted the importance of disaster preparedness, the need for strong and decisive leadership, and the fragility of social order in the face of catastrophe.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, what would happen if a disaster of that magnitude struck a major city today? Are we any better prepared? Have we learned the lessons of the past?
Those are questions worth pondering. We've made advances in building codes, emergency response systems, and disaster preparedness. But the 1906 earthquake reminds us that nature's power can be overwhelming, and that even the most advanced societies can be brought to their knees in an instant.
So after all we've learned, after this deep dive into the heart of a historical disaster, what's the takeaway? Why does the 1906 San Francisco earthquake still matter today?
I think it offers a powerful and enduring lesson about the human condition. It reminds us of our vulnerability in the face of natural forces, but also of our incredible capacity for resilience, compassion, and innovation. It challenges us to think critically about our own communities, our own preparedness, and our own values in the face of potential adversity.
It's a sobering thought, but also an inspiring one. The story of San Francisco's recovery from the 1906 earthquake shows us that even in the wake of unimaginable loss, we have the power to rebuild, to learn, and to grow, and that's a message that resonates deeply even over a century later.